Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Public Works for today, Monday, February 25th, 2019.
Commissioner Garcia, Cabello, James, and Davis are present. President James, we do have a quorum. May we start with Bureau introductions, please, starting with Bureau of Street Lighting.
Good morning, Eddie Chavez, Bureau of Street Lighting.
Good morning, Sunil Rajpal, Bureau of Street Services.
Good morning, Brett McReynolds, Bureau of Contract Administration.
Good morning, Matty Lawn, Bureau of Engineering.
Good morning, Mike Mullen, Bureau of Sanitation.
Good morning, Ted Jordan, Public Works General Counsel.
Fernando Campos, Executive Officer. President James, we do not have any speaker cards under general public comment. We also do not have any commentary under the Neighborhood Council comment section. We did receive a speaker card on item number 5 for today's agenda. In addition to that, we did receive an email that came in for item number 5 as well and will be distributed to all commissioners.
We'll close general public comment as well as the Neighborhood Council category of commentary. Let's go ahead and take care of our contract acceptance. Mr. McReynolds, on number 6, Council District 4, Contract Acceptance Sidewalk Repair Program Package number 14.
Yes, thank you, President James, Commissioners. Brett McReynolds, Bureau of Contract Administration. This is for a small repair program, Small Sidewalk Work Package 14 and CD4. On October 21st, 2016, your board approved the small contractor on-call contractors list. This contract was awarded to J.L. Moody in April 23rd, 2018, off that list of contractors in the amount of $56,267.74. The contract repaired sidewalks at Unidad Park in the Pico Union area, and work included sidewalk repair, utility pole box relocations, and other related work. 2 change orders were issued, bringing the total cost of the contract to $41,861.52, which is a reduction of $14,406.22 in the award amount. The change orders removed Fire Station 35, which will be addressed later. And this contractor, all business inclusion outreach requirements were waived due to the small contractor size. However, this contractor, J.L. Moody, is a MBE, EBE, OB certified firm with levels of 31% MBE, 8% WB, and 42% SBE, 31% EBE, and 5% DVBE. Work was completed on November 2nd, 2018. There are no unresolved disputes or property owner issues.
Well, the numbers were good even though they were waived. Any questions? I'll make a motion that we adopt agenda item number 6, seconded by Commissioners Garcia and Davis. Any objection? Without objection, we'll adopt agenda item number 6. Any issues sending number 6 forthwith? We will send number 6 forthwith. Is there a second to my motion? We approve the meeting minutes of the Wednesday, January 23rd, 2019 meeting by Commissioner Cabello. Any objection? Without objection, those meeting minutes will be approved. Agenda item number 1, Mr. Price, you're here today. Welcome back, sir. Revised task for solicitation number 53, Development Services Procedure Manual and B Permit Plan Check Services Project. This is the Bureau of Engineering, recommending that the board authorize the city engineer to issue a revision of TOS number 53 to SOMAS, increasing the budget authority from $2,150,000 to $3,200,000, so just over $1 million, to develop a new online utility permit and inspection dispatch application for the Bureau of Engineering and the Bureau of Contract Administration with implementation and technical support. So you'll let us know what's going to happen now. Go ahead.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Randy Price with the Bureau of Engineering, and we're here to revise the Task Order 53, which was given to SOMAS back in 2017 to develop a private development procedures manual for all of our district offices and the staff that provide services to the public, the private development community, and the general residents in the city of Los Angeles. The private development community issues permits for work that affects the public right-of-way. And so SOMAS was hired to develop procedural manuals to go over all the processes and standards that we have, including all city codes and state legislative codes, and compile those into an online resource and document that would be used by staff at the district offices, as well as be available to the public and those people that are coming to the city for services. So we asked SOMAS to do a number of things. Part of that was to go through all of our permitting processes, interview staff, develop those procedures, as a part of that, they interviewed, our utility permit people. They talked to contract administration staff. They also talked to our clients, which with utility permits, we issue approximately 12,000 utility permits a year. That's principally to the Department of Water and Power and the gas company. That's a lot of people out in the streets doing construction, impacting local communities and the traffic. And so as a part of this process, and also looking at the utility permit process in general, we came to the conclusion that we needed to really revise our application. We had, back in 1999, we had developed an online permitting system, one of the first in the country, that was really liked by the utilities, since they didn't have to come down and get every permit. They didn't have to go to a district office. But that permitting application had been in place since 1999. Technology has changed a bit over that time period, over the last 20 years. And so this particular application it does need revamping, it does need refreshing, it does need additional functionality. In addition to just upgrading our existing, our U-permit application with new technology and new applications, we now take on more responsibilities for the activities that are taking place within the street. We are looking at greater oversight for trenches that are cut by utilities in the street to make sure that they are put back into a structurally sound manner. We want to be able to track the effect of those trenches over time and hold those utilities and the subcontractors liable for any warranty of damages that occur if they're not put back in place in the proper way. The other thing that we want to do is track all of the activities and manage the people that's in the public right of way. And to do that, we need better information. We need to know exactly when those utilities are in the street. We need to know when they apply for an inspection. We need to know when they start construction. We need to know when they end construction, and exactly where they are in the street. And so to affect all of those things so that we can better manage those activities and have less of an impact on the other people that want to use the street, whether it's a private citizen or filming companies or First Amendment marches, all the different uses that the street is put to, we want to be able to manage that, and that management begins with the Bureau of Engineering and, of course, with contract administration. So a part of this is to build two new applications, utility permit applications, one for the Bureau of Engineering and one for contract administration. The contract administration element and the Bureau of Engineering module will communicate so that we will know when construction starts. We will then be able to provide better information to the other people using the streets and let them know, we have somebody that's going to be here at this time. We prefer that you not be there. We can also better coordinate with the Bureau of Street Services for resurfacing programs, and then protect our streets that have been recently resurfaced. So those are the key elements for this the new task that we want SOMAS to do, is really to help us better manage the streets within the city of Los Angeles. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Price. With the SDRF and our ability now to collect those funds, obviously the improved information and the accuracy that we're getting is going to be key to our revenues in that area. So I appreciate the summary. Commissioner Garcia.
Thank you, President James. I just want to say that once this is all done and over, given the fact that we move it forward today, can you come back and give us an overview of the website? Because I thought that it would look so clean on the website, and it's much easier to know what permit you need to get and how to get it. So I would, if in a couple months or whenever it's ready, please come by and give us an overview to the board if that's possible.
Yes, indeed. We'd love to do that, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Garcia. Commissioner Davis?
I'm very glad to see us to be able to keep up with technology and to upgrade our system so that we can be more efficient and effective. And I think that communicating with each of the various bureaus is critically important, and that there are systems and levels of accountability for each bureau that must be adhered to perhaps a little more technically than we have been able to do under the current system. So that this system is really good for us in continuity of information and communication with each of the bureaus that work together. How will this program benefit the user on the other end of the table? How will they benefit as a result of the implementation of this?
Really, the primary user for this application is, of course, the utilities, the Department of Water Power, the Southern California Gas Company, AT&T, the different Time Warner Cable. Those are the primary customers that use the system to get a permit and submit their plans and get them reviewed and get them approved so that they can go out and do their work and provide the services that they need to provide to the citizens within the city. So for them, you know, the benefit really is an easy-to-use application that they don't have to come down to a district office to get a permit. They can get it go online and get that permit, apply for that permit, and get their approval process. They can pay online. And so it really takes, it's really a benefit to them just in terms of it's being more efficient and just not having to, you know, face LA traffic and go down to an office, you know. It saves them a lot of time.
Mouthful there, facing LA traffic alone is worthy of it. So yeah, I'm sure they're going to be equally as happy about this as we are going to be.
Yes, indeed. And they have given, we've met with them and they've given us input on the types of things that they need and what they want to see. And
Great.
so,
Glad to hear it. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Davis. Commissioner Garcia has made a motion that we adopt agenda item number 1, seconded by Commissioner Davis. Any objection? Without objection, we'll adopt agenda item number 1. Mr. Price, good to see you again.
okay, thank you, sir.
Any issue sending number 1 forthwith? We will send number 1 forthwith. Number 2, Council District 14, emergency change order number 9, demolition of the Parker Center project, recommending that the board authorize the city engineer to issue emergency change order number 9 to Silverado Contractors Incorporated for a not-to-exceed amount of $750,000, which includes contingency for the project to abate the additional hazardous materials identified on the exterior of the Parker Center building. Mr. Young on number 2.
Good morning. My name is Paul Young with the Bureau of Engineering. The design-build contract was awarded to Silverado in June of 2018 for a total amount of $16,737,549, with a construction contingency of $3,462,451. So altogether, the contract to demolish Parker Center was $20,200,000, including a contingency. The project, of course, involves the demolition, total demolition of Parker Center. That includes removing hazardous material. There's a utility tunnel that will be cut back, not totally demolished, but cut back, a partial basement removal, and removal of foundations. There are also some excavating that's required. The bid documents that are called bridging documents, because it's a design-build methodology for this delivery, contained a hazardous materials survey report. This report was done by a firm called ATC. Once Silverado took over the site, they brought in their own industrial hygienist, hazmat company called Citadel, and they did their own materials survey, hazardous materials survey. What they discovered when they did their hazardous materials survey were additional materials. And these additional hazardous materials were located in the caulking around the exterior windows. We figured that the advantage of scaffolding is the reason Citadel was able to find it and ATC was not. ATC didn't discover these in their survey. The materials that they discovered were asbestos and polychlorinated biphenyls, also known as PCBs. I think we've kind of heard of PCBs before. PCBs are considered hazardous materials when they exist over 50 parts per million. Unfortunately, the PCBs they found were over 50 parts per million. As a result, they had to be removed as a hazardous material, required both by the state and by the federal government. So, in moving forward and removing the material, the city asked that the contractor reach out to 3 firms or 3 subconsultants to perform this abatement. The low bidder was Environmental Construction Group. Their bid was $1,044,000 and some odd dollars, and that was the low. The city later negotiated with ECG, or Environmental Construction Group, and they came up with a cost of $982,000. The work was to take about 40 days. So to avoid schedule delays with this project, BOE Liaison Commissioner Jacinto was contacted on December 4th last year, and emergency change order number 9 was issued on December 5th last year for a not to exceed amount of $750,000. The balance of $232,000 would come out of the contract's unforeseen hazardous materials allowance. And in that account, there was approximately $300,000. So that is the situation. It's actually a $750,000 change order.
Thank you for the explanation, Mr. Young. I also appreciate the further negotiation with Environmental Construction Group after the exterior abatement quote had initially come in. You went out and got 3 quotes, still ended up with a lower number. My question is not really for you as much as it is for you to answer today.
Oh, okay.
As much as it is for the Bureau of Engineering to maybe consult with the city attorney's office. I don't know if there's anything here for us to have further discussions with ATC Group in the fact that they missed this the first time, and there's this added cost. But that's something for engineering to decide with the city attorney's office on if they want to inquire with our contractor or with ATC on some type of reimbursement of some of these funds. It doesn't stop what we need to do now.
Yes.
But I think that's a future discussion that might be warranted. But with that, Commissioner Davis, you have a question?
Yeah, I was just going, just for basic information, where do we discard our potentially hazardous and hazardous waste when we acquire it from these sites?
There are predetermined sites throughout the, I think throughout the state. They may even go into Nevada, Arizona, but there are prescribed sites to deliver these materials.
I see. Okay. And in terms of the question that was asked by our president about the capacity of those who are prime contractors doing this work, do some primes have different technological equipment that allows them to have a farther reach at identifying these potentially or hazardous waste than others? Or is it our expectation that every prime contractor who does this work, we expect them to have the same level of capacity to be able to identify comprehensively every hazardous waste at a particular site?
Well, yeah, we generally expect them to have the full level of expertise to discover whatever hazardous material is there. It was a miss by ATC. We figure part of it is because it was, these are fixed windows and it's on the exterior side. It's an 8-story building. The caulking is primarily located in the tower. So, and then they were working, this is a design-build contract. We're moving quickly. So we figured maybe that had something to do with ATC's miss. But yeah, we will be in discussions with them regarding this miss. We've already had some meetings with them. I think we have another meeting today to discuss how they're going to make commends for this era.
How were we able to discover the company that was able to go more comprehensively deeper to get it? How did we?
Well, Citadel wasn't our company. It was our contractor's company. So we hired Silverado.
I see. And
as a requirement of this, they had to bring in a third-party hygienist, industrial hygienist, and they hired Citadel. ATC came to us through our prime consultant in our PQOC list. So they were one of the hazardous materials contractors associated with that contract. All the PQOCs have their list of sub-consultants. And in this case, ATC was listed with this firm. It was the IBI group. And so that's how we came to get ATC. They're a very well-regarded hazardous materials company in the area. So it's kind of a surprise that this would happen to them. We're really surprised as well. But it's just something that has happened in this particular occurrence. So we just figured maybe it had something to do with access. Now, generally, there's sub-consultants, not contractors. They don't have the same equipment on hand as like a prime contractor would. Prime contractor can have lifts and et cetera to get to everything they will need to do.
Sure.
And this firm had limited access or limited abilities.
Sure. Thank you for that information.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis. Anything further? I'll make a motion that we adopt agenda item number 2. Thank you, Mr. Young. Seconded
you.
by Commissioner Davis. Any objection? Without objection, we'll adopt agenda item number 2. Any issue sending number 2 forthwith? We'll send number 2 forthwith. I would note for the oral record that the reports, the hazardous material survey reports and such were attached as transmittals 1 and 2 as well. So those that are listening online that have any interest in this have access to that information. Agenda item number 3, deductive change order, Council District 15. Deductive change order number 037, Excel Paving Company, recommending that the board authorize the city engineer to issue deductive change order number 037 for the Century Boulevard Extension, Grape Street to Alameda Street project to reconcile the final contract amount. Mr. Mungra on number 3. Sounds like settled. Go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Ramnik Mangra. I'm with Bureau of Engineering Street Program. Century Boulevard Extension project. This project was awarded by this board on January 13, 2017 for total amount of $13 million, $562,126.41, including $696,045 contingency. To date, we have issued 35 change orders, and the executive amount is $640,860, or it's less than 5%. And this change order is a deductive change order of $562,378.33. So after we get the credit of these change orders, the final change order amount is going to be $78,481.67. It's about 61%, 0.61% of the contract for change orders. And we are requesting to authorize city engineers to issue deductive change order number 37 for this project to reconcile the final contract amount. Are there any questions?
Well, we still stayed below 5%, which is pretty good, and then we
Yes.
have this deduction to close everything out. So it makes it look better than it really is, but at the end of the day, it's not a bad workaround. Commissioner Garcia?
Thank you, President. I just have a question on regarding the scope of the work, more of the timeline. Has this started already? It wasn't clear on the board report.
Oh, this project is already constructed.
It's done already?
Done,
Oh, good.
yes.
Okay, good. I
Yes.
wasn't aware of that. So
Yes.
That's good to hear. So we're just closing out now.
We're just closing out the project.
Perfect. Got it.
Thank you, Mr. Mungra. I'll make a motion that we adopt agenda item number 3, seconded by Commissioner Garcia and Commissioner Davis. Any objection? Thank you. Thank you, sir. Without objection, we'll adopt agenda item number 3. Any issues sending number 3 forthwith? We'll send number 3 forthwith. Agenda item number 4, authority for expenditure, Act 1 personnel services, recommending that the board first find in accordance with Los Angeles City Charter Code Section 371E that it is in the City of Los Angeles' best interest to exempt and sole source the need for continued temporary accounting services since it's impractical to competitively bid these services due to its temporary technical nature and urgency to meet construction invoice payment deadlines as required by the California Construction Code and the city's 30-day payment policy. Secondly, authorize myself or 2 commissioners to execute an authority for expenditure, the numbers 19-740303M, in the adjusted amount of $70,000 with Act 1 personnel services for temporary accounting and administrative services. And third, authorize the board's executive officer to work with Act 1 personnel services to execute and amend the letter of agreement to update the insurance requirements and extend the term of work through May, well, it says 2, but probably through as well, to and through May 30th, 2019. Mr. Valencia, is this your first time before the board?
No, I did it before when I was at OCB.
Oh, okay, you did OCB. Okay.
You gave me a really hard
First time in this capacity, though.
Yes.
Okay. All right. And I won't reveal my difficult questions for first-time presenters.
All right. Thank
All right,
you.
We'll leave those in the drawer. All right, go ahead, sir.
All right. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Jason Valencia with the Executive Offices of the Board of Public Works. Just to summarize the request, we are requesting the board find that it is in the city's best interest to sole source and process an AFE for temporary accounting and administrative services for Act 1, also known as Apple One Personnel Services, for the grand total amount of $70,000. The reason for this request is because back in July of 2018, the Bureau of Sanitation implemented a closed-circuit television sewer inspection system. As a result of that, Bureau staff, they've been able to find many more weak spots in the sewer infrastructure, resulting in an increase in emergency sewer repairs. And because of an increase in emergency sewer repairs, there's now an increase in invoices being sent to our Office of Accounting. Currently, our Office of Accounting is understaffed. We are onboarding staff. We onboarded some staff this month, and we'll be onboarding more next month. But because of the urgency of processing invoice payments within 30 days to be in compliance with the California Construction Code and the City of LA's payment policy, we cannot afford a lapse in time to process these payments. So we are requesting that the board allow us to execute or process this AFE with Apple One, also known as Act 1, and amend the letter of agreement to include certain insurance provisions, and we'll extend the term end date until May 30th. And if we don't stay in compliance with the 30-day payment policy to our contractors, we do run the risk of being penalized by the contractors, which can cost the city more money than this AFE.
Mr. Valencia, I can't sign this fast enough as far as I'm concerned. I don't really have any questions directly other than I see there are a couple of memos in the file that are attachments with our executive officer and the controller's office. We've been in touch with the controller's office as well as the CAO's office over the past, several months now regarding this issue that has come about because of the added work that has been taking place. And I would just encourage you and Dr. Campos, who's here, just do whatever you can to stay ahead of this. We will provide whatever support we have or whatever support you need to be able to get these payments out on time. And I know that we don't have a big issue with a source of funds here because we do have salary savings because of the vacancies that have existed in accounting for some time. I will make a motion that we sign this one. And if you need, now that's a quick second from Commissioner Davis. And if you need a second one for even more people, I'll sign that one on Friday. We're all in. Any objection? Without objection, we'll adopt agenda item number 4. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any issue sending number 4 forthwith? We will send number 4 forthwith. Agenda item number 5. Pipeline franchise agreement, non-compliance with insurance requirements, violations and monetary penalties. Recommending that the board direct the petroleum administrator to issue violations to the franchisees listed below for failure to comply with section 5.2 insurance requirements of the franchise ordinance. I'm going to read through these. Some of these we've been through back in October, and this is a 120-day extension in essence from that date. Direct the petroleum administrator to issue violations to the franchisees listed below for failure to comply with section 5.2. Cooper and Brain, A. B, E&B Natural Resources, C. Hillcrest Beverly Oil Corp, E, because D was taken care of back in October, O'Donnell Oil, F, Praxair, and G was was also handled in October. Secondly, approve the monetary penalty assessed to each franchisee as listed below for failure to comply with Section 5.2 insurance requirements. Cooper and Brain, $10,000. Hillcrest Beverly Corp is number 3. $10,000 NASCO Petroleum. Number 4, $10,000 O'Donnell. Number 5, $10,000. Number 6, Praxair, $10,000. A couple of those were handled back in October. That was 2.2 and 2.7. Mr. Intuck, why don't you, I see that we have 1B and 1C are now compliant in this 120-day period, 1B and 1C being E&B Natural Resources and 1C Hillcrest Beverly Corp. So that will take number 3 out. You'll summarize who we're now still dealing with. And I know I'll note that we have a speaker card from O'Donnell's representative, and Praxair has sent us email communications, and I've had communications with the CAO representative who's here today regarding a reason for additional time on Praxair. But let's go ahead and get the summary from you, and then we'll hear from O'Donnell.
Great. Well, good morning, President James, Board, Uduak-Joe, and Petroleum Administrator. Yes, E&B Natural Resources and Hillcrest Beverly Oil Corp. have now become into compliance. They did self-insurance in the last 120-day period and should not be issued a violation, and they've been struck. Also, it should be noted that NASCO was already issued a violation at the October 26th board meeting, and they paid their $10,000 fine. So on 2-4, that should be stricken because it's already been issued. Do want to note that NASCO has not paid their annual franchise fee for 3 years. They do not have a bond on record, and they do not have sufficient insurance levels. They have indicated that they want to terminate their franchise, which is a separate process from complying with insurance and bond and payment requirements. And so they are preparing the paperwork to submit for that. But we are also have begun the process for the second round of violations, which is a $25,000 violation because they have still not complied with their insurance and their payment.
That would be an additional agenda item,
That's
right?
an additional future agenda item that will come before you probably within the next month.
Okay, go ahead.
But for today, they should be stricken.
They're off the calendar for today, but go ahead with the others.
Yeah, I would move next to O'Donnell Oil, who is represented here today. O'Donnell Oil has a franchise agreement from 2010. They applied for a crude oil pipeline franchise agreement.
And by the way, Mr. Intuck, to interrupt you, let's go ahead and just handle O'Donnell since they have counsel here.
Sure.
And they've shown up, and then we'll handle the others afterwards. But as you go right ahead and continue with O'Donnell, and then when you're done there, we'll hear from their counsel. Go ahead.
Great. On their franchise they did in 2010, they did have lower insurance amounts. They had a requirement for, $6 million umbrella. They did not have a requirement for pollution liability. They did have a requirement for auto and general liability. And previously, some of those had expired. They have now renewed to those levels. But at the hearing on October 26th was about the CAO's new requirement for crude oil pipeline insurance levels. Those levels are $2 million for general liability, $1 million for auto, $1 million for workers' comp, $25 million pollution liability with sudden and gradual coverage. And that form has been sent to them in August of 2018, emailed again in September. We had the hearing on the 26th. I did follow up with an email after the hearing in November, also another email in January, and we've had several exchanges in February about the insurance requirements, and they still do not meet the current CAO required insurance level for a crude oil pipeline. They have said it's inactive, but it's filled with water, but this, I checked with Dogger, this pipeline is connected to an oil production well, and while the well is inactive, it looks like for the past year, it was active a year ago. And those type of wells you can turn on and off. Maybe anytime next week, next month, it could be turned on and crude oil could flow through the line again. most of the production that comes out of an oil well is a mix of oil, water, sand, gas. And so they did confirm this is not potable water or drinkable water, which has a different insurance requirement. And so the recommendation today is to continue on with the violation of $10,000 to come into compliance. They have indicated they're interested in terminating their franchise agreement. And again, that's a separate process than complying with the insurance agreement. So I'm happy to let the council speak.
Great, thank you. I've got a speaker card for Mr. Coffey, William Coffey.
Yes, thank you very much. And I appreciate the board's opportunity to be heard on this matter. And the board, some of the members may recall I was here back in October.
I do.
When this issue was addressed. And one of the primary issues raised back in October was the failure to comply with Section 5.2 of our client's franchise agreements that pertains to modification of insurance requirements. And that section is very clear, and I've attached that agreement just for reference as Exhibit 1 to my letter here. But first of all, the threshold item is insurance should be modified or could be modified if the operations of the person who has the franchise change to an extent that requires modification. There's been no predicate fact in that regard to begin with. This is a 2-inch pipeline that has not been in use. Our client has this franchise agreement and had contemplated in the future using it in connection with Well 71 to dispose of water that's generated from the oil production process, but that has never been in use for that purpose, and it has not been in use and is not in use today. So there was no predicate to changing the insurance requirement on the agreement to begin with. Secondarily, as we pointed out at the October hearing, there's other requirements in 5.2, which would include having a public hearing, and then ultimately, if there is an approval for a modification for our client's franchise, then there's a 90-day notice requirement before that change can be implemented. And I attached as Exhibit 1 to my letter, Exhibit 2, the amended recommendations from when we were here last time on October 26th, and specifically those recommendations included, in addition to continuing the matters, an instruction to the Petroleum Administration to issue the notice required under Section 5.2 of the franchise agreement. And subsequent to the October meeting, I've been in contact with Mr. Entuck's office. I've been answering questions he's been providing about our client's the pipeline and what the proposed operations might be. I've also been inquiring about the fact that I had never seen any notice come out subsequent to this, the October hearing before the board. And I was finally advised last week that for whatever reason, they were advised don't send the notice out, so that there was no 90-day notice as had been recommended and approved back in October. And I'm looking at item 3 under recommendations, instruct the Petroleum Administration to issue notice to each franchisee listed above in response to Section 5.2. So it is our strong position that the insurance requirements have not been validly modified per Section 5.2 as it relates to my client. Now, in terms of the current insurance requirements that Mr. Entuck did touch on that are in our franchise agreement from 2010, we were in full compliance with those insurance requirements. And I attached as Exhibit 3 confirmation of this fact, which is an email from the Quick Comply system from this past Friday that confirms we have all the insurance that is required in the franchise agreement as detailed in Exhibit 1, and those are currently and validly in effect. Having said all of that, we therefore strongly dispute that there's any basis to issue a fine at this point to O'Donnell based upon an attempted change in the insurance requirements. But having said that as well, the reality is our franchise agreement is only going to last another year or so. I think it expires in 2020 by its terms. We have a 2-inch line out there that we don't use, haven't used, would like to potentially use, or would have liked to potentially use as a part of a system to transport water from Well 71. But at this point, frankly, I discussed this with Mr. Entuck on Friday, who I've had a good dialogue with on all these issues and has been helpful, but obviously doesn't agree with my position. In any event, I suggested at this point it would seem to make sense from my client's standpoint. They would like to approach just implementing an agreement to terminate the franchise. But we strongly dispute there's a basis to issue a fine today. What I requested in my letter is that we hold this matter over for another 60 days and give us the chance to go ahead and complete whatever paperwork is necessary to terminate the franchise and do whatever we need to do in that regard.
Well, okay. So I understand where you are, Mr. Coffey, but let me go through a couple of questions for you. So, and the termination issue we can deal with as a separate agenda item. I think Mr. Intuck's right there procedurally, of course. But let me go back to the notice for just a minute. Because I was here in October, I remember handling that notice issue vividly. Our hearing is available online. I don't know if you listened back to it or not, but is the written notice that you reference, is that some sort of legal trigger that your client needs for something?
Yes, the modification can't be effective until that 90-day notice is given and then those 90 days pass.
So
That's
here's
one of the requirements.
Well, here's my concern. There's a procedural issue that you've raised. I hear you. But there's also the practical issue. And your letter references at the board, this is the third full paragraph. At the October 26, 2018 hearing, the board acknowledged the city had not complied with Section 5.2 and continued the hearing to today to allow the city the opportunity to comply with Section 5.2. That's on notice. So, with all due respect, sir, that's I'm happy to go back and listen. I may want to just out of to see how my memory serves me still. But my recollection was I didn't go to that point. It's typically not my style to acknowledge that the city didn't meet a requirement of the franchise agreement. What I remember doing was saying that so to avoid that issue completely, let's bounce this whole thing out. And we bounced it out. I originally said, we'll bounce it out 90 days. We bounced it out 120 days to this point. So that notice issue would, in essence, be moot. And the reason I did that was because you were here, other representatives were here. We were all looking at each other. We were all discussing these items. To me, that's notice. And that's why I put everybody out to February 25th, because then everybody has notice. It's actually more than 90 days. It's 120 days. So that issue we've eliminated. That was mine. And my express intent with doing that was to get rid of the notice issue, to get it off the table. So here we are on February 25th, and it's the notice issue again. And what you're telling me is, okay, we said that I did at least concede that we may have the notice issue. We may not have complied, but to solve it, I put it out 4 months so that we would be in compliance. You're saying that, okay, the notice issue is still a problem because even though we were all here staring at each other and talking to each other about this, because the city did not send you the next day or some subsequent day after the official 90-day notice in writing, that we still can't go forward with this. In the meantime, you've referenced a number of communications that you've continued to have with Mr. Intuck to resolve this matter, which again seems to me to indicate that maybe notice wasn't written, but notice was in effect practically given, in the sense that you're negotiating with Mr. Intuck in a number of emails and correspondence. So it sounds like to me that it's a bit of an argument of convenience. And what frustrates me is, what my recollection is that I specifically wanted to continue everything 120 days to get the notice issue off the table. And I think my next question is for Mr. Jordan. Ted, do we need to again comply with this 90-day? Do we need to issue some sort of written notice today or tomorrow to get this notice issue off the table? Was our discussion last time not sufficient? Because what I'm inclined to do is to have somebody in Mr. Entuck's office go back and listen to that hearing and see if we did not get a verbal waiver of that notice during the discussion.
Well, certainly out of a belt and suspenders approach, if a separate document that stated notice pursuant to 5.2A, that would no doubt take care of it. It would push everything out 90 days. But again, that's more of a belt and suspenders approach on top of what it seems to me from the record, the complete record of all of the communications and discussions, that there is in fact already notice because of this issue has been now known to everybody for going back to the hearing.
Yeah, we all stood here. Everybody was notified. We all had notice. The argument of notice, I'm not sure what you want to accomplish, Mr. Coffey, by making the notice argument.
Can I address?
Sure.
Yeah, and it's actually more than just a procedural issue. This is very substantive failure to comply with this provision. Again, this provision is only to be applied if the operations of my client have changed to the extent that would require some change in insurance. So contractually, that never happened, and they've been paying and have been paying and continue to pay and continue to be in compliance with the significant insurance requirements that their contract does require. So the fundamental factual predicate to making any change in insurance doesn't exist here, and that's why you're supposed to have a full-blown hearing, go through the process, and then ultimately, if an approval is, modification is approved, then you have a 90-day notice before it can be effective. To my knowledge, and I've never seen evidence to the contrary, none of that happened here. So when I showed up here in October, and I'll be honest with you, I had not been aware of any of this until like the day before that hearing. But when I reviewed it, it was clear none of that had taken place. But this is a substantive issue, and the issue is these modifications are not trivial insurance requirement modifications. One of them is for a $25 million sudden and gradual policy, which presents a significant financial hardship to my client to the point where they really can't do it. They're a very small company. And so it's not just a procedural nicety that we're concerned with. We're concerned with the fact this contract was not complied with. Now, having
but there's
said
a difference between procedural nicety and trivial. I don't think I used the word trivial.
Well, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. Believe me, and I appreciate, again, what everyone is saying and giving me the opportunity. But those are the significant issues that have not been overcome here as far as we're concerned in terms of compliance with the contract. So I think that's a very significant issue that just simply hasn't been complied with. But beyond that, I have had discussions with Mr. Entuck. My hope in having those discussions was to try to, first of all, say, look, number one, we're not using it. Secondarily, if we do, it will be for water produced as part of this process. It's not a toxic chemical line. Is there something we can do here to recognize exactly what the use may be, and can we come to some agreement where these requirements may not apply that you want to propose, and we could come with some resolution to resolve that? That's the process I was trying to further with Mr. Entuck. And again, he's been perfectly reasonable with me. I think we've had a good relationship in that regard. But I also had asked him, because I was looking for this, if there was going to be a notice, to see what it was going to say and what it was going to. I thought we were going to go through a process to sort of comply with 5.2, and I never got it. And I followed up, and it wasn't until last Wednesday, late in the day, that I was advised, well, there's not going to be any notice because we're told we don't need to have the notice. And so now, and we're going to go ahead and go forward with a fine. So, that's why I've submitted this, and that, frankly, is why we ultimately said, okay, at the end of the day, it may make sense here just to work out some kind of determination. But again, my main point here is I just simply don't believe as a matter of law and as a matter of the terms of this contract that there's a basis today to issue a fine.
Okay, and so the baseline, and we'll hear from Mr. Intuck, the baseline of your position is your client's not operating in a different manner that would warrant the increased insurance. And to make that determination as to whether or not your client is operating in a different manner, your client is entitled to a hearing on that.
Exactly.
Okay, Mr. Intuck. And just know, Mr. Coffey and Mr. Intuck both, I have no problem, if that hearing is required, we're talking about a $10,000 fine at the city's treasury. That is a matter that, at least monetarily, is trivial when you look at our budget. I know it's not, it's real money because your client would have to pay it. My point is simply that I have no issue holding that hearing if that hearing is substantively required. And if that's the case, then that's the hearing we need to have. But I want to hear Mr. Intuck's response on that.
Thank you for that. And just very briefly, again, we strongly believe that is the hearing that would need to be required. But it may be, as a practical matter, we come up with a way where we don't get to that hearing because we just say there's a year left on this thing. Let's just come up with a practical solution for everybody's interest.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Intuck.
Thank you again for your time.
Go ahead, Mr. Intuck.
Thank you. I would just like to recall when we first started this process in April of 2018, we had over 30 franchisees who were out of compliance in their insurance requirements.
Right.
And we have gone through continual written notification. And if I could read from you the notice to O'Donnell Oil on April 18th, 2018, first notice of violation, non-compliance of City of Los Angeles franchise insurance requirements pursuant to Section 5.2 of the above referenced ordinance, at its own cost, comprehensive general liability, including contractual liability, workers' comp, automotive liability, and pollution liability insurances pursuant to Section 5.2A. The minimum amount of the insurance is $10 million, $1 million, $1 million, and $25 million. This outlined the new requirements and insurance rates. This was sent to Bonnie Doyle, who I believe is the owner. We had previously corresponded with her throughout 2018 until we had our hearing on October of 2016, when the first time Mr. Coffey came. So I do have 3 additional written notices of violation with the amounts. Also, we did attach the CAO recommended insurance levels that had the pollution liability of sudden and gradual for crude oil pipelines. Mr. Coffey is correct. They have not modified their operations. They applied for and were granted a crude oil pipeline franchise. And these are their insurance requirements for a crude oil pipeline franchise. It is immaterial to the franchise whether it's active or inactive. You want to? And according to the state fire marshal or the governor's office of emergency management, if there were a spill from this pipeline, this would be considered a hazardous waste spill, because produced water is considered hazardous waste because it does have crude oil in it. If there's a crude oil spill, you have to report it to the governor's office if it's more than a barrel. So again, they confirmed this is not potable water, this is not non-toxic water, this is produced water that comes out of an oil well. This line is connected to an oil production well, and then on the other end is a tank for the flow to go through. And so also, just on the 90-day notice, we are months beyond that. If that is actually, they wanted a written copy. I don't know if his client gave him a copy of the 3 written notices we sent last year. Plus, we did have a public hearing last October, and this is a continuation of that public hearing. And so I don't think there's grounds for this because of fairness. For everyone else who has complied, who has upped their insurance levels, who already paid penalties and fines, there's other companies beyond NASCO that have paid penalties for this same exact issue, that I don't see that there is reason to grant an extension or to waive the violation.
Thank you, Mr. Intuck. Mr. Coffey, can I ask you a question? And look, why are these 3 notices? I think I know what you're going to tell me, but this is a test question. Why are those 3 notices from the city? Are you aware of the ones that Mr. Intuck's talking about?
I have a couple of them here. I don't know that I have all 3.
April 18th, August 28th, and September 12th. We're happy to circle those back around to you. What's insufficient about those notices for your 5.2 argument?
Well, they don't address the requirements of 5.2 at all. They don't. First of all, these are not after there's been some sort of evidentiary hearing or determination that there's been a change of my client's operations that would warrant modifications for insurance requirements.
That's what I thought you were going to say.
Secondly, there was no hearing that took place. Third, this doesn't in any way say this is a 90-day notice under 5.2. This is an after-the-fact document that says we're going to fine you. It's not a document that satisfies the prerequisites of 5.2 under the contract.
Okay. Let me tell you what is on my mind. Mr. Intuck, thank you, sir. You have a seat.
Thank you.
Mr. Intuck. I think that the notices that Mr. Intuck has sent out are sufficient for our purposes here. However, I also think that, well, I may have another question for Mr. Coffey, but I think that I want to be fair to both sides, obviously, and Mr. Coffey's client, O'Donnell, their only right to appeal to the city council, Ted, is if it's a $30,000 fine?
Yes, let me confirm that section for you. Yes, under section 2.6, D as in David, only single penalty assessments that exceed $30,000 are subject to the appeal to the city council.
Okay, that forces Mr. Coffey into a written situation with the court. I'm not sure that's fair to him for this $10,000 fine to his client. I don't, with all due respect, I'm not worried about Mr. Coffey, but to his client, I'm not sure it's fair to them to force them to a writ on a $10,000 fine because they don't have the right to go to council. Therefore, what I would be inclined to do is see if I can get, we need to, I don't mind Mr. Coffey having the hearing that he's asking for, Mr. Intuck. My question would be, because I want to get this notice issue forever gone. I thought we had it gone last time. Maybe he found a loophole. Maybe he didn't. But either way, we still have an argument by him that he did. So what would your 90-day notice look like? It's no secret. I mean, if you send it, he's going to get it. He's sitting right here. I'm going to ask you to send it. I may even want to be CC'd on it. What would it, kind of in sum and substance, what would it say? Or are we going to need to have, or do you need to go back and look at this insurance issue regarding change of operation?
Well, I think the change of operation is a moot point. They said there's no change of operation.
Okay.
We never brought up a change of operation.
Okay.
That's immaterial.
Okay.
I think on the notice, we could add a sentence saying this is a 90-day notice of new insurance requirements, but it's nearly identical to what's already been on all the documents to date. So I don't know what would be different.
All right, let me ask this.
On just putting the word 90 days.
Okay, let me go to Commissioner Cabello, and then I'll see if I have more questions for Mr. Coffey.
Thank you, President James. So, Mr. Untuck, what I'm trying to get clarity on, since I wasn't here last October, is the penalty, the fine, is not based on change of operation. It's based on never having had the required amount of insurance?
This is for inadequate insurance levels for the pipeline franchise, right?
So when they initially entered into the franchise agreement to the time I wouldn't want to use the hot word notice, but the time you sent them a letter, let's just say, they had never, from the time of signing that franchise agreement, had adequate amount of insurance. Is that correct?
No. When we started this process last spring, and we were reviewing their insurance, they did not have adequate insurance even to the old franchise terms.
Okay.
So, which they have now come into compliance with 8 months later, but for the last maybe 8 years, they may not have been in compliance. This is part of the functional transfer from the Department of Transportation to the Board of Public Works Pipeline Franchise Administration. And so prior to us taking the authority to oversee franchise in 2017, the Department of Transportation managed it. And I can't speak to how often, and I've not seen any records of them confirming compliance with the franchise prior to us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Cabello. That's helpful. So, look, let me step back a little bit. Well, actually, let me ask Mr. Coffey this question before I do. Mr. Coffey, what would I'm trying to get through your notice argument. I'm inclined to make a motion to give you one more shot, meaning that today's the last time I want to hear from this argument. If I hear it next time, then we're going to let you file your writ. But I'm trying to avoid that because I do think that's a tough right of appeal for your client on a $10,000 fine. What should the city's notice? What would the city's notice contain substantively? What should it contain in a way that would keep you from making the notice argument during the next some such hearing?
Well, I think, and in light of what Mr. Intuck just indicated, and I think it's true, there hasn't been a change of our operations that would even warrant a modification of insurance. So I think that threshold failure means that there's not a sufficient basis to modify the insurance to begin with. And I'm just reading straight from Section 5.2. If operations of grantee, my client, change to an extent requiring a modification of the amount or type, then the board has the public hearing, then they go to the notice if they approve it. None of that happened here. And the question asked earlier about whether we were in compliance with the insurance that we are required to have under the contract before there's any proposed modification, we are. And the only reason we're here today is because of that we haven't complied with these heightened requirements. Okay. That's the reason we're here for a fine.
Understood. Ted, Mr. Jordan, if we put this over, we give Mr. Intuck the request to do the 90-day notice. He'll do the 90-day notice, and then we will agendize this after that date, and you can work with Mr. Coffey on a date. I know you two have worked together. We'll find a date that's convenient for you. The hearing would be on whether or not that heightened insurance requirement were even necessary, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Would your counsel be to do that?
That would be a course of action that should take all of these notice issues off of the table.
President James?
Yes.
When we did have this issue come up with other pipeline entities at the hearing. The second part of 5.2 says, should the board determine a change in the amount of the type or the amount or type is required, then the grantee shall be given notice. We are reliant in the franchise on the CAO's insurance level requirements and type, and it did change, and that was why we started the notice of violations. I just don't know if we're going to open Pandora's box and have everyone who has already applied or come into compliance, who have paid violations now, come forward and say, well, now you're giving the issues is not settled, and you're giving someone extra time. We want it as well. So we could have 30 different pipeline franchisees come here if that is a determination.
Well, but they were here when Mr. Coffey was here, and they didn't make that argument at that time.
There was a number of people who disputed that the insurance level should go up or that we had the ability to make them go up. And we do have Scott Goldstein here from the CAO's office, risk management, who can speak to that. But it has been determined that it's gone up, and that's why we moved forward at the last hearing with violations and why we've cleared people as compliant because they have met the new insurance requirements.
Okay. We need to take a recess for a second. Look, I need to talk to our city attorney. Let me just say on background that I was going to mention a moment ago. For this very reason, the Board of Public Works is the right place for the city, for the Petroleum Administration office to exist. I'm not disparaging any other departments, but what I'm saying is this department is uniquely equipped to handle these kinds of hearings when other departments aren't. And it's something that the city council and the mayor's office wanted when they moved the Petroleum Administration office here. And I mention that, Mr. Coffey, because our attempt is to give your client fair process. What I want to figure out with our city attorney for a moment is, somewhat privately, is whether we've exhausted that with the other franchisees that have already been before us. So we'll take just a moment of recess and we'll be right back. Okay, just for the record, we just had a sidebar with Mr. Entuck, our executive officer, Dr. Campos, our city attorney, Ted Jordan, and the vice president of the board and myself. So 2 members of the board. Mr. Jordan, you'll explain kind of procedurally what your recommendation would be for the board at this point regarding the hearing and then the 90-day notice.
Yes, so just to clear the record of any issues of notice and hearing, I think it's pretty clear there's been actual notice of these requirements, but just to clear the record, my recommendation is that the board have a short continuance, not 90 days, continuance of a week or 2 or however long it takes to get everybody to be available, so that the board can make the determination as to whether there should be any modification to the insurance requirements, modification to what has been printed in the original franchise. Once the board makes such a determination, if it does, then at that point under 5.2, the language is, should the board determine a change in the amount or type is required, this is referring to the insurance, grantees shall be given 90 days advance written notice of the change. So my recommendation is, to summarize, that the board continue this item to a date soon in the future where there can be a hearing on this insurance requirement. If the board determines that the insurance should be something different than what the franchisee has, then at that point there is a notice given of that board's determination. There'll be a board report, just like what was attached in his letter, and that will constitute the 90-day notice described in the franchise agreement.
Okay. Mr. Coffey, are you available 14 days from today? And Mr. Entuck as well? Okay. Got a yes from Mr. Entuck. As Mr. Jordan just said. Yes. Okay. Thank you. Then let's put this item as to O'Donnell Oil over to March 11th. Mr. Entuck, that's okay with you and your crew? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Coffey. So that's where we go with O'Donnell Oil. Sir? Mr. Jordan, come on. You want explain what's going to happen on March 11th, Mr. Jordan?
I just want to clarify.
Yeah.
The hearing today is whether to impose a fine. As I understand what we're now going to do, the hearing on the 11th will not be for that purpose. The hearing on the 11th will be for the hearing to determine whether or not the insurance should be, then there'll be a subsequent 90-day notice of what that change is before it kicks into effect. Is that correct?
Yes, that is my understanding, and the purpose, again, is just to clear the record of any confusion as to notice or periods of time. So it does sort of reset this to that extent, yes.
Yes.
And so then is the agenda item for a fine, is that vacated and will not be part of the hearing on the 11th?
We'll probably leave the agenda item on the agenda, but it's not going to be vacated here, but there will be a new agenda item just for O'Donnell Oil on the hearing. Although we could continue this item by 120 days, because that's still enough for the, yeah. So why don't we put this item over, Dr. Campos, 120 days is going to be around June
24th, Monday, June 24th, or Wednesday, June 26th.
June 26th. That'll be for the penalty. And then March 11th will be for the determination. Now, depending on what happens on March 11th, June 25th may be moot. But
Did you
this...
say 25th or 26th?
26th, I'm sorry, correct. This, because this agenda item exists, it's not going to be vacated. It will be continued to June 26th. But what happens on March 11th may have an effect on it one way or the other.
And both these items are at 10 a.m., correct?
Yes.
Very well.
Same location.
Thank you, everyone, for your time.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Jordan. Thank you, Mr. Entuck. Mr. Entuck, let's continue. So we've taken care of O'Donnell today. A couple of the others you've already referenced. What do we have outstanding still? Cooper and Brain and Praxair?
Yes.
Okay, which one would you like to take first? Your choice.
I think Praxair has representatives here.
Okay. No, no.
Okay. Well, Praxair.
We have an email from Praxair. We did receive a letter.
So we have an email, a couple of written statements. They too were non-compliant, have increased their levels of insurance, but do not meet the insurance requirements according to the CAO Risk Management Office of having $25 million gradual and sudden. They dispute that their commodity can have gradual pollution. I have asked them several times to confirm what is your commodity, and please send your material safety data sheet that outlines the hazards for that commodity, and I have not received that. They have had all the same notice requirements starting in April of 2018, and August of 2018, and September of 2018, and they did have a representative here at the hearing on October 26th asking for a continuance, which was granted for them to come into compliance. I know they do have staff in Connecticut and in San Pedro. We have emailed the documents. I've reached out to them after the hearing in November, reached out to them again in January. I know they were complaining of non-responsiveness of 2 weeks ago, but I continue to email the forms. It's been on the website continuously from the CAO Risk Management. The forms have not changed since February of 18, nor have they given sufficient evidence that they actually do not have a potential to pollute, because there are material safety data sheets that do say that they have a hazardous, potentially hazardous material, but I just don't know because they have not confirmed what it is, and I've asked them for it for more than 3 months now.
Okay, we've got a representative from the CAO's office that could shed some light on Praxair. I understand, sir. If you could just take a couple of minutes for us.
Good morning. I'm Scott Goldstein from CAO's office, Risk Management. And as to the Praxair issue, because it involves a commodity, not really, I mean, a different commodity other than an oil product, my office certainly does, we're not subject matter experts in that field, and so we can't make a determination whether the commodity, I think it was listed as nitrogen gas, oxygen gas, things of that nature. So today, at this point, we don't want to say for sure that, oh, yes, this is a possible hazardous material that would need the pollution insurance. As a resolution, what we've considered is we've enlisted one of our risk management consultants to look at a study about, among other questions, looking at certain commodities to see, to give us a recommendation if those would need a pollution insurance. So we're waiting on that. I estimate about 30 to 60 days before we get a report on that question.
Okay.
It wouldn't be binding in any way, but it would be
it's sure
something
helpful,
for us
though.
to really consider. Right.
Well, if you could do that for us, Mr. Wellstein, then we can make the binding issue on the, we'll decide that on the insurance level based on that. So since you're asking for the 60 days for your report, and coincidentally, they're asking for 60 more days, and Mr. Intuck, that gives you more of an opportunity to work with them. For Praxair, I would say let's put this item over for 60 days as to them. Scott, if you need more time as the 60 days approaches, you can let Mr. Intuck know and we can move it out a little farther.
I shall. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, sir. Mr. Intuck, is that okay with you regarding Praxair?
Yes, that's good, and I think that report will clarify. And I can't speak to why they haven't been responsive.
Okay.
And they do have $25 million pollution liability insurance.
Right.
It just doesn't have the exact language of gradual and sudden as required.
Okay. Well, this may be something that, since they do have that level of insurance, we can work out with them. And since we're getting that additional report from, at least we get some advice from the CAO's consultant on this, I think it's worth putting over. So that'll be the order. 60 days on Praxair. What are we looking at, Dr. Campos?
That would put you to Friday, April 26th.
Friday, April 26th is fine for Praxair. All right, thank you. And Cooper and Brain?
And Cooper and Brain, they have updated their insurance levels. They also did have some that were non-compliant. My paper's stuck here. So they did increase their insurance level from $15 million to $25 million for pollution liability, plus they increased their general liability, but they do not have sudden and gradual itemized in their $25 million pollution liability. They also were disputing if they should have it and claiming they're a small operator and that it is difficult. And we did talk about this at the past hearing. For some of our pipeline franchisees, complying with this requirement had zero cost impact on their insurance policy, and they were actually able to do it in one day for the larger operators. For some of the smaller operators, it's an increase in their premium amount, just kind of like your auto insurance amount would go up if you got bigger coverage, and that increase, because they have a smaller insurance package, does have their costs go up. I don't know. I think they didn't want to fine, but I don't know if the risk management determination is going to look at small operators, because they do have a relatively small segment of pipeline. But this is the same crude oil pipeline requirement that we've had for all the other operators.
Well, would your recommendation be to assess this penalty?
They have been working with us. I might say we do a continuance like we just did with Praxair to see what the study comes back.
Well, we could put them over to the same date.
Yeah, or we could continue to that date and at that point
Okay.
have them. And they do not have representatives here today. So
Right. Okay, then I trust your judgment on this, of course, Uduak, and given your hesitancy to assess the penalty today, it's convenient enough for us to put Cooper and Brain on the same date with Praxair. But by then, if they are still not here and we don't have any more information, I'm going to lean on your recommendation again as to whether or not we should assess the penalty.
yeah, I think we should at that time.
Okay. Great, then that'll be the order on Cooper and Brain as well. Anything further on this item? We don't have anybody else left?
Oh, no, that's it. Everyone else sent on Peak Resources,
Right.
E&B, Hillcrest have all complied with self-insurance.
Let me just say, Uduak, we really appreciate the hard work of your team. I see some of them here today. As you mentioned earlier, when you all started this process, there were some 30 or more that we've had to bring into compliance, and your office has continued to do that and had the communications and done the legwork necessary to even create where we needed to be at this point. And we still continue to make progress along the way. And inevitably, with any kind of industry, but especially this industry that's heavily regulated, not just in the state of California, but around the country, as it should be, you're going to have issues like this that come up. And this board is, like I've said, uniquely equipped to manage these very issues in the way that we're doing so. So we appreciate the collaboration.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item number 7.
Mr. President, Fernando Campos,
Yes.
Executive Officer, if I can interrupt you just quickly. Procedurally on item number 5, we have two options. The board has two options. One, we can continue the item as you have stated, moving Cooper and Brain and Praxair to Friday, April 26th, and then O'Donnell to Wednesday, June 26th. And I would leave item 1B and 1C along with 2, 2, 2, 3 on the agenda as is. Or 2, I can ask this board to adopt the deletions of those two contractors or franchisees as officially as amended. So this board could take an action, a motion to delete those two and continue the other 3. That's one option. The second option is we can continue the entire report.
No, I like your first option, Dr. Campos. Excellent point. Thank you. So as to those items that Mr. Intuck cleared with us at the beginning of the hearing, those entities will be taken off the agenda because they have been, their issues have been resolved.
And that's just for the record, E&B Natural Resources and Hillcrest Beverly Oil Corp. Would be removed from the agenda completely and from the report completely.
Right. So and NASO.
And NASCO Petroleum, correct.
Right. So they don't show up on the next agenda at all.
That is correct. If this board were to take a motion, we can adopt the report as amended and continue the 3 items.
Correct.
For the future.
That'll be the order on number 6 or number 5. Great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Intuck.
Could I get a second, please?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes. Seconded and thirded by myself. Any objection? Without objection, that'll be the order on number 5. Thank you. Agenda item number 7. Emergency on-call geotechnical structural construction services, various public works projects. Recommending that the board declare Environmental Construction Incorporated and Green Building Corporation to be non-responsive as discussed in the report. Secondly, approve the list of 9 qualified contractors to provide emergency geotechnical structural construction services for repair, replacement, and/or construction of retaining walls, bulkheads and slopes, placement of engineered fill and erosion control, debris removal, and other emergency geotechnical and structural services on public works projects. Third, authorize the city engineer to transmit contract agreements to the 9 qualified contractors for expeditious signature. Fourth, authorize myself or 2 members of the Board of Public Works to execute the signed contracts received from the approved contractors and forward the executed contracts to the city clerk to attest. And fifth, we will determine the initial order of the emergency on-call geotechnical and structural construction services list by random drawing. Mr. Garcia.
Good morning. Pedro Garcia from the Bureau of Engineering, Geotechnical Engineering Division. This report is to request that the board approve the selection of 9 qualified contractors to provide emergency on-call geotechnical and structural construction services for various public works projects. The board is responsible for and has jurisdiction over the design, construction, maintenance, and repair of retaining walls, bulkheads, slopes, and erosion control measures within the city of Los Angeles. To handle emergencies related to these infrastructure, the Bureau of Engineering administers a on-call contract. Right now we have currently 7 contractors on our list of emergency on-call contractors. Work is solicited to these contractors as it comes up. In most cases, this is emergency type of work. In some cases, it's urgent necessity type of work. So contractors are required to respond almost immediately, in some cases, depending on the type of emergency. The current emergency geotechnical contractors list expires in May of this year. So in anticipation of the expiration of the list, we requested from the board last year in July to issue a request for qualifications to contractors to start producing the new list. In August of last year, we received statements of qualifications from 11 contractors. The statements of qualifications were reviewed based on the criteria indicated in the request for qualifications. Criteria included items such as appropriate contractor's license, bonding and insurance capacity, experience with geotechnical construction, ability to respond to an emergency, and contracting experience with the city. Due to the local business preference program, there was a bonus 8 points given to companies that are qualified as a local business enterprise. So after scoring all of the 11 contractors that submitted statements of qualifications, there was 2 that did not achieve a passing score. Those are Environmental Construction Incorporated and Green Building Corporation.
I'm sorry, Mr. Garcia. So environmental construction was number 3, so they're out, and the other one was?
Green Building Corporation.
Green, they were 4. So numbers 3 and 4 out of the 11 are out, so that's how we have the 9.
Correct.
Okay, go ahead. Commissioner Cabello.
Thank you, President James. Just curious if there was any written response by Environmental Construction or Green Building Corporation to being disqualified or not making the list? Any kind of objection or complaint filed?
No, there's been no notice. This hasn't been put out. This is the first time that we're presenting our selection.
But they were notified before today, right?
No.
Mr. Jordan?
Well, there have been instances when we do a pre-qualified on-call list where a firm has come and wanted to present as to why they feel they should have.
Yeah, we've heard that before.
That we should have gotten a higher score. My recommendation is, although it does present some delay, is to afford the 2 firms that issue here.
Well, they've had this.
They've had the benefit of the agenda was.
Yeah,
posted.
the agenda was posted.
But my understanding is, and the Bureau will correct me if I'm wrong, is that our practice has been to actually notify a firm. You know, you were going to be found. Technically, they're not non-responsive. They're going to be viewed as not having achieved the qualifying score. We would try to give them that extra notice above and beyond a pure Brown Act. We posted the agenda type of notice. So,
Yeah,
I mean, it doesn't require much time, but
We can just put it over a week, right?
Yep.
What does that do to you guys?
1 week is okay.
Oh, okay.
I mean, again, the issue is whether, I mean, if they choose to, they can come in and try to articulate why they should have had a higher score.
I agree. I think that given the fact of this being an on-call list and what that means in terms of time, I think that is not only important for us to follow the procedure, but that I think it'll be in the best interest of both us as well as those who are doing business with us.
Yeah, just for these 2 entities, they work with us a lot. My guess is that they know because of the agenda posting, but we don't know for sure. So why don't we put this over to the 6th?
Yeah. Thank you. Is there any issue or any delay on forthcoming projects or any consequence to putting it over to the 6th?
For 1 week, no. We just need to make sure it's in place before the existing contract expires.
What's our deadline on that?
Mid-May, early May, I believe.
Okay.
If I may make a suggestion, whether or not, if the 2 companies, Environmental Construction and Green Building, if they feel strongly about it and they want to tell the board why they think they should have gotten a higher score, then they would have the ability to do that in whatever hearing we schedule in the future. It has no bearing on the remaining contractor.
Yeah.
So if you want, you can
still go
continue
through
to
that.
have the hearing today, reach an outcome as to all of the other contractors, even put them on the list.
Yeah, we've
And if
done
the
that
other two firms want to contest it, they can be added to the list that you would be creating today. That way
Exactly.
there's
We've
no
actually
delay.
done this before.
Yeah, we've done this before.
Yeah. So we're still going to go through with the 9 that you have, and we'll select the order. But we're going to leave the list open for the other 2 to have until March the 6th to bring a, provided that we'll add this to the end. Mr. Garcia, have engineering provide written notice to both entities today, copied to Dr. Campos and to Mr. Jordan, just letting them know, and letting them know that if they have any issues they want to raise, they need to do so in writing by Wednesday, March 6th. And then if we get an issue, we can make a determination on each one of them. If we don't, then it's over. Yeah, the letter go out today. Yes. Fair enough?
Yes, so if they do provide I guess, a written statement, I mean, are we going to evaluate that, or are we going based on our recommendations and we're just giving them a chance to voice it? Or
So I would just simply provide them a notice that you were not, it's not that dissimilar from what BCA does when they notify people why they're non-responsive. So you send a letter out to them telling them, both of these entities, why there's a reason they didn't make the list, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So you tell them, each one of these, why they didn't make the list. And tell them that if they have any issues with that or they want to appeal that, they need to do so in writing to you by March the 6th. And then we can set a hearing. Correct, Ted?
Yes.
Yeah. My guess is that you're not going to hear from either one of them, but they at least have the opportunity. Okay. We've dealt with this. We actually had maybe 3 or 4 years ago. We had an entity. I think it was a BOE list. We had an entity that was. We had 2 entities that were unhappy. We had a hearing with them. One of them got on the list, and one of them didn't. After the fact. So it is something that occurs. Go ahead. I think we interrupted your presentation when we asked that question.
No, that was pretty much it. I was going to go over the recommendations, but
okay.
Basically that's it.
Dr. Campos, are we ready with the? Okay. We have to randomly draw which order they go. Yeah, we do it now. That way it's set in stone. Yeah. Well, since it's your first time, you get to be the one to draw them. No, he's coming over here. Okay, Mr. Jordan will take notes on which ones you draw in what order. Okay, Commissioner Cabello will draw the numbers.
First firm on the list is Kiewit Infrastructure West Company. Number 1. Second firm is Calix Engineering. Number 3 on the list is John S. Meek Company. Number 4, Los Angeles Engineering. Move these around.
Halfway through almost.
Number 5, Hayward Baker. Number 6, Mladen Buntic. Number 7, Clark Contracting. Number 8, Mike Perlich and Sons. Last and final,
It's last on the list anyway.
PPC Construction.
Okay. You have those, Mr. Garcia?
I got them.
Okay. So, great. Dr. Campbell said we cleared everything we need to do on this item. We just need to take a vote to approve.
Just an order of clarification
Yep.
for this item. Number 1 would be continued, so the declaration will happen on, let's see,
March the 8th.
Wednesday,
Six- well, no,
Wednesday,
6th is the day we're
March
giving
the
him
6th.
We're giving them until the 6th. So we need to,
So Friday, March the 9th.
no, because here's the deal. We're giving them until March the 6th. So they have until March the 6th. So we won't know till the end of that day whether they have stepped in or not. So I would say March the 13th for the declaration. Because if they didn't step in, then we'll need to make the declaration later. If they did step in, we'll need to put them on the agenda at some point.
So this board would consider the report as amended
Yep.
to continue item number 1 to Wednesday, March 13th. This board would then make a motion to consider 2, 3, 4, 5 on the agenda, and then if Environmental Construction and Green Building Corporation is added to the list, then they would be number 10 and 11 respectively.
Yes.
Great, thank you. I just need a motion as amended.
That will be the motion. Seconded by Commissioners Cabello and Davis. Any objection? Without objection, that will be the order. Any issue sending it forthwith? We'll send it forthwith. Mr. Jordan, thank you for all your help today. Dr. Campos, have we cleared the desk?
Yes, you have.
Okay, then we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.